You are here, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Good to see you, Rich.
We don't talk enough, but we've talked frequently, consistently over the years, but never had a sit down. And between our busy schedules, it hasn't landed till right now, and I'm happy about it.
So am I. Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
First things first, please introduce yourself.
Oh, man. I'm Patrick Cooke, originally from Canada, Toronto. Born and raised city boy. Came to Nosara, felt the energy here, and just couldn't leave. That's pretty much it. And so decided to make this more of my home than anywhere else, and it's just been incredible. I do a bunch of different things. I'm basically a creator. That's what I do. I create spaces for creativity and expression. So I do that through music, I do it through podcasting, some like life coaching, that kind of stuff.
Before we go further, state any music spot where people can find you and the name of the podcast, and just let's get that out. We'll put it up on the screen.
The podcast is being-podcast.com. It's Being with Patrick Cooke on Spotify or whatever, Apple Music. So I will be releasing more music this year than probably at any time in my life, so I would happily send you some links for that. At the moment, I just have my own solo album on Spotify. You can check that out. Patrick Cooke, Surrender is the name of the album.
Geez, so between music, podcasting, you're creating. Geez, where to go with that? What do you like creating the most? Let's start there.
I mean, I'm into, like I said, creating spaces for people to discover themselves and to access their highest expression. Right?
So tell us how that works.
So as a music producer, for example, which is my primary thing, is I'll be working with a young artist who has something within them that the world needs to hear, has to be expressed through a song. So we'll explore that. Like, we'll speak for an hour or longer before we even go near the music. It's like, what's really going on for you? Like, what's important to you? What's something that you want to say that you're afraid to say, but everybody else is thinking? Just before we started rolling the camera, you said something similar,
Very interesting,
right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you get the real authenticity from an artist, is when they feel the safety to be vulnerable, first to go into that place and say, yes, I am scared of this, or yes, this does bother me, and I do have the courage to say something about it in a way that's accessible and allows, because you're basically giving permission to other people to feel the same thing. They're thinking it, but they don't have the courage to say it out loud, right?
Yeah.
So through an artist producing a song or a guest on a podcast, my goal and my talent, I would say, is to create that space where they feel safe, they feel okay to be vulnerable, and to go into that place of their deep soul and come out with the gold,
I got you.
This is something I've cultivated over time and didn't even realize it was my talent until the last couple of years. It's like, oh, this is what I do. It's like, I'm trying to do all these different things. Like, no, this is what I do, and it's manifest in different ways, through music, podcasting, coaching. But it's really, it starts with yourself. Everything starts with yourself, in my opinion. So I've done a lot of work because of this place. Nosara has been instrumental in my own personal growth and journey. I think everybody who stays here can say that, because it's a powerful place, and it sort of challenges you in ways to look at yourself that you can kind of ignore in the West, with their busy schedules and, everything, the calendar's full. It is here too, but in a different way. So through my personal journey, I've discovered that if I can hold a space of peace and calmness within myself, and that sort of creates, an electromagnetic field around me, and people enter that and they can feel it, whether they understand it or not, it doesn't matter, but they can feel it. And it's like, oh shit, I feel comfortable and safe with Patrick for some reason. I don't know why, but, and so within that safety, there forms like a bond of trust, where they're like, okay, I do feel okay to talk about this, or to go into something that feels vulnerable for me, and to be present with it, because most of the time those things are uncomfortable. We just want to shut them out, and we do that through distractions or addictions or alcohol or sex or whatever it is, and we all do it. That's just human beings. But if you can really sit with the discomfort or the things that bother you, or your fears or your vulnerabilities, and just be present with them, you can access a level of gold and expression that, if you express honestly and authentically, can be very meaningful for other people, right? So a podcast can land with something, oh my God, I can't believe you guys talked about that. I've been feeling that way the whole time, but never heard anybody say it out loud, right? Or in a song, the same thing happens. Like, I want to hear that song again because it speaks to me. It's like you're inside my head. You're speaking to me. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that's basically what I do, and it's incredibly meaningful work for me. You know?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, why don't you give us something analogous to Nosara, as in, Because a lot of people come down here seeking one thing, and then the place has a way of putting a pressure and adjusting to a different.
Yes,
Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Like the first time I came here, it was just like a 1-week vacation, and I've been traveled the world, been many places, many beach towns, and never felt the energy that I felt here. And I didn't know what it was or why. I was like, I have to be there. And God bless my wife at the time. It was just like, let's go. So we just committed to a year, and
shout out to her for agreeing to that.
absolutely, very courageous. But I didn't understand what that calling was until I really opened to it, and that took several years, and this has been a journey I've been 10 years, right? But it's allowing yourself to sit with the discomfort, of things that, like Jung, the psychologist, refers to it as the shadow. It's the parts of ourselves that we don't like or can't accept, so we push them away and we other it, right? And so all of us do it, and it's just a safety survival mechanism. But if you can sort of come to terms or allow the darkest parts of yourself to be present, then you can befriend them, you can heal them, you can transmute them, you can work with them. Right now, most people are just pushing them away, so they're just operating in the background, causing all sorts of problems without you knowing about it, right? And that's basically living unconsciously, which most of us do. But the sort of awakening that you hear about, on social media or life coaches talk about online, an awakening is when you're just willing to look at your own shit, really, right? And so that's and it's not fun, and it's not easy, and it's not, it's uncomfortable.
It's the hardest thing ever.
It's the hardest thing ever, but it's also the most rewarding thing ever. So I kind of have been going through that process in my own life, and it's resulted in lots of changes, lots of challenges, a divorce, personal troubles, financial troubles, all sorts of stuff. I've gone through the gamut, and but I can say it's been worth it. Every single moment of pain and discomfort has been worth it because I've discovered more of myself. I've become more comfortable with myself. And like I said at the beginning, if you can cultivate that sense of peace and calmness and stillness within yourself, nobody can take that away from you. No situation, no stress, no world, government, nothing can take that away from you, right?
Well, that's tough to hear, man. I love the town, I love the place, I love the surfing, I love the vibe, I love the people. I love all the stuff that everyone else loves, the nature, the environment, the whole setup. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I live in paradise, except for when you have to make money inside of the town.
It's very difficult.
It's a different existence.
It's a different existence, yeah.
So talk me through your thoughts on that, because I could use some help on this.
Well, I've been lucky enough that hasn't been the case for me. Although we did run La Bodega in Playa.
Thank you for that.
I got that started. Jenna ran that.
Man, Jenna, a million hugs. Yeah. Thank you, Jenna.
And Matt and Joellen set us up with that, so a big shout out to
Joellen.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody.
But yeah, so I've been working remote. Like I'm a composer for TV and advertising, film. I write music for picture. So I was doing that.
Like whatever a gun is that has a lot of different bullets, that's kind of you, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. A jack of all trades in some sense, which has been a bit of a blessing and a curse, frankly,
that makes sense.
Because if you're not specialized at one thing, you're not a pro at one thing, then you sort of spread yourself a little too thin. I don't know. But for me, it's I need adventure and variety in my life, so I've appreciated that I haven't just done one thing my whole life. And but yeah, making money here is real challenging. So either have to come with money, which a lot of people do, or do it the way you're doing it, which is just like struggle it out, which is not easy, or you have to have something remote. So.
That's good advice. I would give that same advice to anyone looking to come here. Like, for example, we get a fair number of people who own a restaurant that's popular where they're from. Well, that's a different gig here.
It's a different gig here, man.
Or name any industry, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. So, restaurants, real estate, surf instructor, yoga instructor.
That's all say that.
Or project management. That's about it. Yeah. Otherwise, you have a remote job and you're in IT or something, or you come with money. That's basically the way it goes here.
For me, what I did was I worked my 20s trying to make enough and get built, in early 30s. Trying to make enough, and it was going pretty well. And then the crash came through. Lost everything. And ended up. I was trying to go around the circle this way. Almost got there. And then got sent back around this way. So I ended up where I was trying to, but I moved here penniless, sold everything I could to bring my dog, wife, 2 kids, a couple surfboards, and buy a crappy Galloper. And start a new career doing something I didn't want to do, but it was where I wanted to live. But the past 14 years, have been taxing. I've never lived a day in Nosara without waking up with, okay, I have to kill to eat today.
Yeah.
I have to produce.
Yeah. I've been lucky to have something remote for most of my existence.
Nosara, you've been here 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot different today than it was when you first got here. Because I'm mad about the construction because I can't get out of my driveway because the construction trucks tear it up so much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I work in a business that does that.
Yeah.
I don't like all the growth, but again, I make my living through helping growth.
Yeah.
I don't like a crowded lineup, but I help a crowded lineup.
Yep.
So I'm walking around saying I admit all this. At the same time, I know whether I live or die, someone's going to be doing what I do.
Yeah.
And also, I go to crazy lengths to try to give back.
Yeah.
I've sacrificed way too much from my family on this town, both financially and emotionally, and I'm trying to find a balance.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So how do you deal with that? Give me some help and guidance.
I mean, I don't have the answers, but I will say there's something about the sense of community that Nosara provides. You know, the growth it happens. It happens everywhere. There's an opportunity. Money's going to follow the opportunity, and that's just what happens, right? It's on some levels it's tragic, and it's not great to see, but at the same time you can't stop the march of progress. Our economy is built on growth, infinite growth, which is unsustainable. But
is this how this machine spins?
This is how the machine spins at the moment. But having said that, there is an undercurrent here of people that are becoming more aware, and even the people that come seeking to exploit it, you know, without naming any names, we all know them, I think are challenged to the point where they find a deeper essence with themselves, you know? And they recognize that maybe their motives weren't pure, and maybe they can make some adjustments. I'm hoping that's the case anyway. I've witnessed it to some extent.
I was going to say that. You're picking up on something interesting most people don't see.
Yeah.
When did you realize that? Because it is true. Even the people who came down mean are a lot more thoughtful and nice.
Yeah, they're more softened. Yeah. Well, Nosara has that energy. Like, it's got this grandmother female energy, I find, where it's just like, you're going to be challenged. If you got any skeletons in your closet, they're going to come to the surface. Like you said at the beginning, pressure, it puts pressure on you, right? And that could be in any manifestation. It could be you get a flat tire, or it's the dust, or the rain, or the bugs, or the heat, or all the challenges of living, the internet going out, the power going out.
Line at the bank.
How do you respond to those? Because, you know, when I first got here, I was like, coffee maker doesn't work. Oh, I'm like angry. Right? I was like, wait a minute. And after a while, I'm like, wait a minute. Look at me reacting to this is seemingly insignificant thing, or, you know, somebody cuts me off in traffic. The things at home where you just be like, oh, you know, but here it's like, that doesn't make sense, you know? And so if you can catch yourself doing that, it's like, okay, if that doesn't make sense, what else about my reactivity to certain external forces doesn't make sense, or isn't serving me either?
So the growth is coming through the experience.
It's coming, well, everything is a teacher. You know, everything is a teacher if you allow it to be. Every experience, good or bad, like there's no bad experiences, it's all opportunity for learning, right? So if you can shift your mindset and then take the responsibility yourself, it's like, oh, that guy said something to me and I got pissed off. We had a fight in the lineup, for example. You know, it's like, okay, was he really pissed off at me, or is there something going on inside of him that he's angry about that I was just the catalyst that he let out the energy, right? So it really has zero to do with me. But I got personally attacked and I responded with my own anger that has nothing to do with him, right? And so you're fueling the fire, right?
So but getting the machine, the wheel to spin.
Yeah.
So are you at a spot in your life where you're advanced enough, or whatever the term is, to where you can see that coming and pause it? And
I mean, this is it. This is the whole crux of anything I've done in sort of mentoring or life coaching is this. It's cultivating self-awareness and taking radical personal responsibility, right? And so if you can cultivate enough awareness in yourself, and I do it through just contemplative meditation or yoga, or just calming your nervous system so you can witness your mind, right? Because right now there's no separation for most people between their mind and, like, it's just your ego. The voice in your head is running all the time. You just think that's you. But it's not. That's your mind, that's your ego, right? So if you can steady still your body long enough to recognize, well, wait, those thoughts, that it's just my roommate in my head just like yelling at me the whole time. That's not really who I am. I'm this beautiful soul that's connected to God or consciousness or universe or whatever you want to call it, you know, but I'm operating through this mind, right? So if you can calm yourself, still yourself long enough, you become the witness of that mind, of that voice, of that ego. And
so the Old Testament statement where it says, be still and know I'm God.
There you go. Yeah, the kingdom of heaven is within. It's the same concept. You know, your connection to the universe and God comes through your soul, not through your mind, right? Ego is in control for most of us, which means, and the ego is very petty. It loves drama. It loves being in the past in regrets. It loves being in the future of worry, you know, and so we're constantly pulled out of the present moment. But everything of essence is in the present moment. So cultivating an awareness of yourself. So yes, the answer is yes to the question. I have gotten to a place now where I can be triggered by an external event and not immediately react to it, right? In the past, I'd be just like, oh, that made me angry, and I react immediately, right? And which is what most people do. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Of course, I still do that. But there are instances where there's an external trigger, and I can, before I react, I'm like, oh, there's that same trigger that I used to react this way to, be it anger, anxiety, whatever. In that moment, I call it the gap, is an opportunity to make a different decision, right? So here's an external trigger. This is how I normally react. They're usually on top of each other. If I open that gap of awareness, in that moment, I'm taking the power back from my ego or whatever the reactivity is and saying, that's not who I want to be anymore. I'm going to either not react or change the conversation or walk away or do whatever it needs for that not to affect me, to steal my peace, like I was talking about earlier. Because if I get angry, then I'm out of control. I've lost it.
So creating that moment of opening is what you're saying is the key.
It's the key. It's a gap of awareness between trigger and reactivity.
Interesting.
Right? Because then you can make a conscious decision what's more in line with a future version of yourself that you want to be. You want to be less anxious. You want to have more self-esteem, like you said earlier. But those people are like you're still tied to the reactivity of that impulse, right? You get triggered, the anxiety. You get triggered, low self-esteem. There's no space there. So if you can open up that space, in that moment, you can say, well, does the future version of me who isn't anxious, who has great self-value, would they react this way? No, they wouldn't. So how would the future version of myself, who I want to become, react in this moment?
Interesting.
Right? And then you can say, oh, he would do this. And then all of a sudden you're becoming that person. And if you continue doing that, you're literally changing your biochemistry. Your neurons who normally fire in this way, for your whole life, I get angry at this trigger. Angry at this trigger. It's the path of least resistance, right? So it makes it very hard to change, which is why most people don't change. It's like, oh, it's just who I am. It's just like, that's how I'm wired. Yes, that's true, but you have the power to change your wiring. This is how powerful each of us are. Because in that moment, you can signal to your brain, I don't want to fire that neuron anymore. It's not who I am. I want to fire a different neuron. And if you continually doing that, then you're creating a different neurological biochemistry in your brain. You can do that through your thought alone, your awareness
I've read that.
alone.
You can repattern the grooves in your brain to adjust.
100%. We're neuroplastic for our entire lives, which is an incredible gift of evolution or God or whatever you want to call it. We can change the way our brain operates just through our intention and our thoughts alone.
So all your problems and challenges and the Nosara taxing effect, you're extremely grateful because you're more at peace and more comfortable with who you are right now.
I mean, there's incredible pressure from the outside, right? And it doesn't mean the stress goes away or the triggers go away. It's how you react to them is what's different. And so that's what you have control of, what's on the inside. You can't control, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be stress, more people, more dust, more whatever the external pressure is, it's always going to be there.
All right, so let's apply it to Nosara. It's expensive, it's crowded, our roads still stink.
Yeah.
I could go on with issues.
Yeah.
How do we apply this to ourselves for those of us that might be stressed and don't like the growth or don't like the pricing?
You have choices. It's either you come to peace with, other people and what they're going to do. They're going to come, they're going to put money in, they're going to build. Like, that's the rate of progress. You can't stop that. The roads are bumpy. Either you just come to peace with it, the dust, the power going out. It's like, that's life here. You can't control everything externally. What you can control is your reaction to it, right? How you feel about it. And if my reaction is, actually, this is not for me, I'm going to move somewhere else. But for me, the benefit of this place far outweighs the external pressures.
Why is that?
Because the connection with nature, the sense of community, like I wave to everybody on the street. I go back to Toronto, my hometown, nobody. They don't even look me in. They're looking at the ground, they're on their phone. It's total disconnection, right? And that's, for me, it's no way to live. Here, there's like, I can look you in the eye and say hello, even if I don't know you. I wave to everybody on the street, even when I'm driving. That, for me, is a huge plus. right? And then the sense of community, like the core group of friends that I've found here. You know, there's a certain thing about people that move here and stay that because that pressure we were talking about earlier that Mother Nosara puts on you, if you can overcome that and work through it, you come out the other side a different person. Like, it's kind of an initiation, right? So a lot of people that come down here, they're like, oh, we're gonna move to Nosara. They stay for 6 months, a year. Like, I can't do it. It's not for me, and that's fine. But a lot of the times, it's because that pressure has been implemented on them, and they don't like it. It's like, I don't want to look at the skeletons in my closet. I don't look at the darkness of my soul. I don't want to look at that shit. I just want to be distracted. Get me home to my Netflix and McDonald's or whatever, right? But if you can live through that, it's kind of an initiation where the people that stay here have been through that initiation. So there's a certain humility, there's a certain camaraderie in it, right? And it's like, yes, okay, this place is challenging to live in, guaranteed. Many, many factors, which we've listed already. But if you can sort of be with those and look at them as all learning experiences and cultivate that inner peace, then there's incredible power to here. You know, the connection with nature, the ocean, the mountains, everything is so powerful, the environment, so.
That makes sense. That's pretty well said. You aptly put.
Yeah, everywhere is a trade-off. You're gonna have a trade-off anywhere you live. It's challenging, expensive, it's remote, or whatever it is. Totally. I mean, it's people just like to pigeonhole and identify you as something. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not, right? It's just the way they, perceive the world or gain comfort or whatever. And the gossip machine is just, it's a bunch of projection. It's like, if people, like I was saying before, if you're not willing to look at your own stuff inside, it's just way easier to look outside and blame and judge, and just, it keeps all of your attention outside of you, so you're never the problem, it's somebody else, right? And that's just what the gossip machine is. It's like, people are unwilling to look at themselves at a deeper level and take responsibility for that, so they just project outward. Right, and that's what happens.
It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier, and
it's not me. It's them.
It's not me. It's somebody else, right? And so, and that happens everywhere, but it's more pronounced in a small town like this.
Yeah,
right?
That small town big hell comment. I think that's what they were referencing.
Yeah, totally. I've managed to disengage from the gossip machine pretty. It's like it's just not worth my time. It's like, I used to, especially during COVID, like I got into Facebook conversations, and it's like, this is going nowhere, it's not serving me. And that's another thing you can recognize in yourself. It's like, is this serving me, or is this just my ego wants to yell because I'm angry about something? And a lot of the time it's just that. People are bored, they're upset, they've got all these challenges in their other lives, and they just like, oh, you're engaging me, I'm gonna take it all out on you, right? And it's like, that doesn't serve either of us. It's just this. So yeah, disengaging from the gossip machine, huge. Expensive, that's really challenging. Like, it's one of the most expensive places on the planet. Like, I've been to Paris, I've been to Manhattan, I've been to, everywhere, and almost nowhere is more expensive than here, which is really challenging. I'm an artist, dude. I don't make a ton of money. I don't know my place here, but I'm willing to do it in order for the quality of life and the community and the nature, and so it's a trade-off. Having said that, I'm going to make a ton of money this year, and I'm going to put that on record right now. Yes, brother.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it, man. I'm so glad you came on.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. What are your 3 favorite restaurants, and what do you like to get there?
Oh, wow. That's challenging.
Take your time if you need it.
Yeah. I mean, restaurants are tricky because it's more about the experience here for me. Like the La Luna experience is beautiful. The Coyote experience is beautiful. Even the Pacifico Azul experience is beautiful because it's got that local vibe, I don't know. I don't have specific restaurants or dishes. I would say, though, if I had to choose, I'm a big fan of Rosie's. The breakfast at Rosie's, just straight up pinto and eggs, with a little Lozano. At Post Surf, come on, and a smoothie, forget about it. It's so good. I go to the one in Pilata now that they've opened, but it used to come, the one in North Guiones.
Shout out to Rosie's.
Yeah. I mean, I got to shout out Chivo. It's been sort of El Chivo has been my sort of home, away from home for years and years, Their eggplant Parmesan sandwich is to die for. And the Bodega Club, both of those are just like, I get almost a couple times a week, And then I'm going to have to say Rancho Tico for my last one.
What do you get? What do you like there?
Well, I either get the fish with the curry sauce and the mashed potatoes and vegetables, or if I'm feeling, I don't eat a lot of meat, but when I do, I get the tenderloin with like the peppercorn or the jalapeno sauce there. And it's just the the comforting old school vibe of Rancho Tico. It's like one of the oldest restaurants here, I believe, and it's like, you know, you feel like you're supporting the community and the family, the locals here when you go there. So it's like, it's pretty cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
What message would you like to say to both the people who are already here?
Yeah.
And then the people coming in?
I mean, it all comes back to the same thing for me. It's like the way to improve or add to a community is with awareness and personal responsibility. That's what it comes down to for me. And those things equate to love. You know, if you come in here guns blazing, I'm just going to make a bunch of money. I don't care who who suffers. I don't care. You know, that's just, it's not the vibe of this place, and it's not the vibe I think that us who have been here a while are trying to cultivate. I think you'd agree with that. But again, you know, there are opportunities here for, you know, financial advancement, so you can't blame the people that are doing that. But if you come, even if you're here to make money and you come with it with humility and respect for the people that are already here, the locals, the environment, then it can be done. You can have a sustainable growth system here, you know? But it's frustrating to see that that's not the case with a lot of people that come down here.
It's interesting to watch the balance. Sometimes the people who you thought were this way or this, and some people, you know what I mean? It's interesting. I don't think you really know who someone is until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And like you see what they're all about. How do they conduct themselves in that situation?
Totally. And this comes back to what we were talking about. If you're not cultivating that sense of peace and awareness and responsibility in yourself, and you get triggered, you're going right back to your old habits. Or your truest self will come out, right? And that's often the ugliest part, which means that shadow we talked about earlier has not been integrated. It's like all that ugliness that is part of you, but you want to push away because you don't like it, or it's unsavory, or you don't want people to see it, will come out when it's challenged, when you are challenged, right? And so that's what you see when people get into situations where they're triggered, all of their demons come out, right? But if you can take responsibility and work with them and heal them, transmute them, you know, accept them first, then nobody can upset your peace, right? You can come at me all you want, but that's just you projecting your shit onto me. It's not mine. Well, we have our perceptions of what we think people are, what they're doing based on our own, you know, we only have our own lens to look at the world through, right?
Well, it's easier to be negative too, like you pointed out.
It totally is.
As soon as you see something new, it's like, man.
Yeah. Well, we also don't like change as we like, because it's a threat to safety, right? So any change.
Right. I was about to say, what is it? Tell me that again. We don't like change. Why?
Well, human beings, our innate response to the world is survival, right? At the very base level of our brains physically, but of our soul is survival, right? And so anything that threatens our survival, any change to our environment that we can't control is a threat to our survival, right? And so that extrapolates through everything that we're doing now. So anybody outsider that comes in that we don't know, that we can't control, is an immediate threat to our survival. So we got to back up immediately. Who is this guy? Do I have to fight? What do I have to do, right? And it's a natural response, and you know, one that's served us very well in our evolutionary capacity, right, for survival over millennia. But now the threats aren't for survival. It's not a lion that's about to eat us, or another tribe member that's about to murder us. It's just somebody that's going to threaten our ego or our income or something, right? So it's not the same thing at all. We have our own lens through which we see the world, which is shaped by our childhood, right? We are programmed as children. So now we live basically 95% in our unconscious. So only 5% of the time we're actually in our conscious mind in control of things, right? So our unconscious mind is shaped by our programming as children, you know, and it's an evolutionary process as well. It's very efficient. So say you learn to brush your teeth, and it's you have to learn how to brush your teeth or drive a car or something. Once you do, it's relegated to your unconscious because it doesn't need the frontal lobe, the conscious mind, to conduct that. It can do it automatically, right? But we get that way with other emotions, with reactivity. All this stuff gets programmed into us, especially if we've had challenging childhoods, like if there's any trauma or any, you know, abandonment or, you know, abusive parents or alcoholism. Any of that stuff in our childhood will be ingrained in our unconscious, and now we're still operating from those survival mechanisms even though we don't know it, right? So again, this comes back to self-awareness. How can we go into the unconscious, the programming that's in there, like if you liken it to a computer, into the operating system, and see what's really going on there? Okay, here's some survival mechanisms that are still operating that are not useful for me. They were useful when I was a kid and I needed safety. I was in trauma, I was being abused. Yes, I had to use those. But now they're not serving me anymore, right? So it's an opportunity, okay, can I let that go? Can I release the energy and use it elsewhere in a more efficient way?
I got you. And you're saying, and if I heard you right earlier, Nosara has a way of shaking that into...
It has a way of bringing that stuff to the surface, yeah. And whether you like it or not. A lot of people just still want to ignore it, and that you can do that still, but eventually, for me, the universe or God or whatever you want to call it will continue giving you the lessons you need to learn in order to maximize the evolution of your soul. Right? So if you keep having the same problem revolving around, you're just not getting the lesson, right? You're still getting into the same relationships, the same abusive, you're still alcohol or whatever it is, the same thing coming around over and over again. You can see the pattern. It's like, I don't know how to get out of this. Well, you're not getting the lesson, right? So it's going to continue until...
We're inside the wheel of samsara. That's the whole deal, right? You have to keep coming back inside the wheel of samsara.
Exactly. You have to keep coming back until you learn the lesson. Exactly, right? But when you do learn the lesson, you get to move on to the next level, right? And if you can imagine everything in life happening for you rather than against you, everybody's like, oh, the world is attacking me, the economy, politics, all this, it's all coming at me. But wait a minute, what if I looked at all of it as an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to grow and evolve my soul? That's a whole different mindset. It's a whole way of different way of looking at life, right? So everything that happens, good or bad, is an opportunity to grow and learn. Right? And so if you look at it that way, life becomes this beautiful dance. And because you've cultivated that sense of peace and calm within you, that's where you're operating from most of the time, then good or bad on the external doesn't matter. They're both equal. You're not attached to some pleasure, because most of us, we just seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's, again, a natural thing for humans to do. Right? But there's as much learning in the pain as there is in the pleasure, as much, to growth in the pain as there is in the pleasure.
You got to get through the pain to get to the next level of pleasure.
100%. And if you can equally enjoy those things, like things that are uncomfortable for me now, it's like, this sucks. I don't want to be here. It's uncomfortable. But I also recognize it's not permanent, first of all. Everything is going to change. It's constantly changing. But if I can sort of sit with it in the discomfort, I'm going to learn something. And that knowledge is going to turn into wisdom, and that means I'm probably not going to have to go through that again because I've learned the lesson. I've surrendered to it rather than fighting because it's uncomfortable or painful, right? Because if you fight it, it's just going to come back stronger, right? Until it becomes a diagnosis or a disease or a car accident or something, right? Because that's the universe saying, hey, you're not paying attention, slap you, and that's what happens.
Any last messages while you have this platform for anyone out there in any way, shape, or form?
It comes down to, love is really the answer. And I know that sounds trite and sort of cliche, but if we choose love, and starting with loving yourself, this is one thing I had to learn myself, because
that's the hard one.
It's the hardest one, because I think you and I are similar in a way where we're very open-hearted, very compassionate. I'll speak for myself. I'm very open-hearted, very compassionate. I want everybody around me to feel good, feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel happy. But I was doing it at an expense to myself, right? People pleasing is basically what it is, right?
So how do you fix that? I have a strong case of it.
Yeah, so do I. But you have to recognize that the best way to serve others is to love yourself fully first. So if you imagine you had a cup and all you want of food or water, and all you want to do is share it with people, it's like, hey, take my water, take my cup. Eventually you're going to be depleted. You have no water or food for yourself. And so if you're depleted, that means you get ill, you don't have enough energy to do anything, and then you can't help anybody, including yourself. But if you fill your own cup first and then share from the overflow, that's a whole other thing. You never get depleted, and you can take care of everybody, right? So taking care of yourself and loving yourself at the deepest level is number one. And that takes...
All right, folks, you heard it here first. Number one.
It takes courage. It takes courage and commitment, but I feel that is what each of us individually should be striving for. And as each of us awaken, heal, learn, love ourselves, then we can get better in communication, we get better at community, we get better at organizing, and that's how we change the world from the inside out. Like going out there and trying to change it without doing the inner work first is possible, but it's way more difficult, right? It's like moving big slugs of matter where you can do it from an energetic space first.
It's very cool to see who you are right now, mister. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Rich. Appreciate it.